Macomb County, Michigan was the last place anyone would expect to become the epicenter of a scandalous and violent crime. In this affluent suburban enclave, manicured lawns and spacious homes set the stage for what appeared to be perfect family lives. Among these residents were Michael and Lauren Harris, a couple that embodied the American dream, or so it seemed to those who knew them only from the outside. Michael, in his mid-30s, was a familiar face around town, often seen tending to his property or attending local events with Lauren. The two had been married for nearly a decade, their union seemingly unblemished by any visible discord. Lauren was a high achiever, managing a successful career in finance. She was well regarded in her field, praised for her work ethic and intellect. As Lauren's career advanced, she naturally became the primary breadwinner, a role she handled with grace. Yet behind her outwardly content smile, Lauren increasingly carried the invisible strain of her marriage. Michael, meanwhile, had grown disillusioned. He worked sporadically in a local contracting business, a role that left him feeling inadequate beside Lauren's mounting success. This imbalance in their marriage became an unspoken yet corrosive factor, eating away at their relationship from within. In early 2007, cracks began to surface. Close friends of Lauren recalled her sudden withdrawal from social gatherings and a quiet anxiety that seemed to shadow her. She mentioned stress at work, but never alluded to any troubles at home. For all appearances, the Harrises continued to live their picture-perfect lives, a facade that hid the insidious realities festering within their home. What neighbors didn't know was that Michael's resentment and insecurity had grown severe, and he had begun an affair with Anna Richter, a young nanny he met through mutual acquaintances. The affair became Michael's escape, a thrill that contrasted sharply with his stagnant marriage. As the affair with Anna intensified, so too did the turmoil in the Harris household. Lauren, though she might not have known the full extent of Michael's infidelity, sensed his withdrawal. Tensions simmered as Michael began coming home late, his absence in both body and spirit increasingly evident. Friends noticed subtle changes in Lauren's demeanor, but without visible proof of strife, their concerns remained silent. Michael's double life was becoming an undeniable weight, driving him deeper into despair and frustration. What would happen in the following months would shatter the fragile veneer of their existence, forever altering the lives of those connected to them. By the fall of 2007, the Harrises' marriage had reached a breaking point. Michael's relationship with Anna had taken on an obsessive tone, with clandestine meetings and secret exchanges that fed his growing delusions. Lauren, however, remained unaware of the full scope of his affair, though her intuition told her something was deeply wrong. She had tried addressing Michael's distancing behavior, but each confrontation ended in silence or vague assurances that everything was fine. The emotional chasm between them widened, and Michael, feeling trapped between his resentment toward Lauren and his infatuation with Anna, began to spiral. On the surface, the Harrises were still part of the social fabric of Macomb County, attending gatherings and events. However, people close to the couple sensed a peculiar unease in Michael's presence. At social functions, he would remain silent, staring off, seemingly lost in thoughts that cast an eerie chill over those who approached him. Lauren's increasing isolation did not go unnoticed either, as she gradually reduced her interactions with friends, often citing exhaustion from work as an excuse. Unbeknownst to her, the distance she created to shield herself was only pushing Michael further away, deepening his feelings of inadequacy and helplessness. In October, Michael's double life began to slip through the cracks. One evening, as he was preoccupied with messages from Anna, Lauren accidentally glimpsed his phone screen. A spark of suspicion ignited within her. She chose not to confront him that night, but began observing him more closely. Over the next few weeks, Lauren's suspicions only grew. She quietly gathered small signs, calls at odd hours, unexplained absences, and the distant, vacant expressions Michael wore when he thought she wasn't watching. A climax was inevitable, and it arrived in early November. In the tension-filled days leading up to the fateful night, the Harrises' interactions grew colder, and conversations were replaced by tense silences. It was only a matter of time before Michael's inner turmoil would break free, his feelings of resentment and anger transforming into something dangerous and irreversible. In one grim decision, he allowed his bitterness to overwhelm him, leading him to a night that would forever rewrite the lives of everyone touched by their story. The facade of their marriage was about to be irrevocably shattered, leaving an indelible stain on the picture-perfect landscape of Macomb County. On the night of November 12, 2007, the growing strain in the Harris household reached its violent culmination. The evening had started like any other, with Lauren coming home late from work and Michael quietly seething in his solitude. As she entered, the chill in the air was palpable. They exchanged only brief, curt words before settling into their separate corners of the house. But beneath this mundane interaction lay layers of resentment and hurt, building to a point of no return. Michael's emotions were in turmoil. His thoughts were consumed by his affair with Anna and his growing desire to break free from his life with Lauren. In his mind, Lauren's success had become an oppressive force, overshadowing him, stoking his feelings of inferiority and anger. His mind, already clouded by resentment, spiraled with ideas he could no longer control. He felt trapped, cornered by his own inadequacies, and convinced that his only escape from this life was through drastic, irreversible action. Sometime past midnight, Michael entered the bedroom where Lauren was already asleep. His footsteps were hesitant at first, but each step seemed to harden his resolve. He stood over her, watching the peaceful rise and fall of her breath. In that moment, all the bitterness and rage that had been building over months came rushing forth. Without another thought, he reached for her neck. Lauren awoke, struggling against his iron grip, but Michael's fury overpowered her resistance. The struggle was brief, brutal, and silent, leaving Lauren's lifeless body lying cold on the bed they had once shared. In the aftermath of his crime, a chilling calm took over Michael. With methodical precision, he began planning his next steps, determined to hide any trace of what he had done. He knew the community would notice Lauren's absence quickly, but he convinced himself he could maintain control of the narrative. Fueled by a grim resolve, he carried her body to the basement, where he dismembered her remains in an attempt to erase all evidence of his actions. He wrapped each part carefully, a grotesque act he performed with a terrifying detachment. His mind focused solely on hiding his crime, disregarding the horrific nature of his actions. The morning of November 13th arrived with a quiet sense of normalcy in Macomb County, but the Harris household bore the dark weight of the previous night. Michael knew he needed to act quickly to establish an alibi and a plausible explanation for Lauren's absence. He crafted a story, telling friends and co-workers that Lauren had left town on a sudden business trip, something that would explain her sudden disappearance without raising too much suspicion, at least in the immediate term. He even sent emails from her account, attempting to mimic her writing style to reassure colleagues and friends. Lauren's close friends and family, however, quickly became alarmed. It was uncharacteristic of her to leave without informing them. As the hours turned into days, her absence stirred suspicion and dread within her inner circle. When Lauren missed a critical meeting at work, one she had personally arranged and wouldn't have missed without good reason, concerns escalated. Her parents, feeling something was deeply wrong, filed a missing person report with the local authorities, pleading with them to investigate her sudden disappearance. The Macomb County Police Department began a routine investigation, initially treating Lauren's disappearance as a potential voluntary absence. Officers visited the Harris home, questioning Michael about the last time he saw his wife. He repeated his story about her impromptu business trip, maintaining a calm and composed demeanor that, for the moment, satisfied their inquiries. Yet beneath the surface, Michael's nerves were fraying. Every knock at the door, every phone call, felt like a potential unraveling of his secret. As days passed, Lauren's case began receiving more attention in the local media. News outlets reported her as missing, circulating her photograph and appealing for any information regarding her whereabouts. Macomb County residents shared a sense of collective anxiety, whispering about the seemingly flawless woman who had vanished without a trace. The neighborhood was gripped by a sense of fear, yet no one could fathom the horror lurking beneath the clean-cut exterior of the Harris home. Despite his efforts to maintain a calm front, Michael's paranoia grew. He began avoiding his neighbors and refused invitations from friends. The meticulous control he had tried to exercise over his facade started to crack under the weight of his guilt and dread. Meanwhile, detectives were beginning to piece together discrepancies in his story. By late November, the pressure on Michael began to mount as the Macomb County Police intensified their investigation into Lauren's disappearance. Detectives found it odd that a responsible professional like Lauren would leave without notifying her family or work, and they grew skeptical of Michael's accounts. Small inconsistencies in his story, like vague details about her supposed trip and his failure to provide concrete evidence of her travel plans, began to raise red flags. The couple's friends, sensing something was amiss, became vocal with their concerns, calling the police with stories about the tension they had noticed between Michael and Lauren in recent months. Investigators decided to delve deeper into Michael's recent activities, and soon his affair with Anna Richter came to light. Detectives reached out to Anna, who, shaken and confused, admitted to the relationship but claimed she knew nothing of Lauren's disappearance. Despite her innocence in the matter, the revelation painted a damning portrait of Michael as a man capable of deceit. The affair cast doubt on Michael's character, and detectives wondered if Lauren had discovered the affair before vanishing. Forensic teams were dispatched to the Harris residence to conduct a thorough search. In the basement, they discovered small traces of blood that had seeped into the floorboards, faint but unmistakable signs of foul play. Michael, watching from the sidelines, grew increasingly panicked. He realized he could no longer control the story, and the walls seemed to be closing in. Every forensic clue uncovered in the house became another nail in the coffin of his carefully constructed narrative. The bloodstains led the police to secure a warrant for a more comprehensive search of the property. In a dark corner of the basement, detectives found bags hastily packed with Lauren's personal belongings, hidden as though they had been prepared for disposal. Each item, once a piece of Lauren's life, now stood as a silent witness to the violent reality that had unfolded within the home. With evidence of foul play piling up, investigators now suspected not only that Lauren was dead, but that her death had been premeditated and carefully covered up by Michael. As the investigation progressed, a growing sense of dread gripped Macomb County. The case now had all the markings of a murder rather than a simple disappearance. Law enforcement officials, under mounting public and media pressure, expanded their search, tracing Michael's movements in the days following Lauren's disappearance. Security footage from a nearby gas station showed Michael loading large, heavy-looking bags into his truck late at night, further fueling suspicion. But nothing would prepare the community for the grim discovery that would soon surface. On a bitterly cold December morning, about 3 weeks after Lauren's disappearance, a local hiker stumbled upon a set of garbage bags, partially buried in the snow at the edge of a wooded area just outside Macomb County. A foul odor permeated the air as the hiker approached, prompting an immediate call to the authorities. Within hours, police arrived and cordoned off the area. Upon opening the bags, they uncovered human remains, disarticulated limbs, a torso, and fragments of clothing that matched descriptions of what Lauren had last been seen wearing. Dental records later confirmed the worst. The remains belonged to Lauren Harris. The discovery of Lauren's body sent shockwaves through the community. The press descended on Macomb County, broadcasting the grisly details, and residents were horrified to learn that such a crime had unfolded in their midst. Michael, once seen as a grieving husband, was now under intense scrutiny as the primary suspect. The police, armed with this horrifying evidence, arrested him in his home, charging him with first-degree murder and tampering with evidence. As Michael was led away in handcuffs, neighbors gathered outside, watching in stunned silence. Some were in disbelief that the man they had shared barbecues and small talk with was now being accused of such an unthinkable crime. Others whispered that they had always sensed something off about him, that there was a darkness lurking behind his stoic demeanor. With Lauren's remains now recovered, the case had moved from speculation to certainty. Prosecutors prepared to present a case of premeditated murder, suggesting that Michael's insecurities and his desire to escape his marriage without facing the consequences had driven him to kill. The stage was set for a trial that would unearth not only the gruesome details of Lauren's final moments, but the psychological unraveling of the man responsible for her death. The trial of Michael Harris opened in early December 2007, a grim event that captivated the community and drew national media coverage. The prosecution presented a narrative of resentment, betrayal, and violent desperation, painting Michael as a man whose envy and bitterness had led him to kill the woman who, in his mind, had overshadowed him. They introduced evidence of Michael's affair with Anna Richter, framing it as the tipping point in his deteriorating marriage to Lauren. Prosecutors laid out each grim detail, from the bloodstains found in the basement to the surveillance footage showing Michael's late-night excursions with heavy bags. Expert witnesses described how the blood evidence matched Lauren's DNA, and a forensic pathologist detailed the likely brutality of her final moments, though the exact cause of death could not be conclusively determined due to the state of her remains. The prosecution aimed to demonstrate that Michael's actions had been deliberate and calculated, presenting him as a man who had not only committed murder but meticulously worked to conceal it. Testimony from Anna Richter added another layer of tragedy to the case. On the stand, Anna described how Michael had initially presented himself as trapped in an unhappy marriage. She recounted their relationship with an air of shock and disbelief, as if still processing the fact that the man she had been with was capable of such a crime. Her testimony, laced with regret and a clear sense of betrayal, swayed the jury by showing the deception Michael had woven around everyone in his life, all while plotting a deadly escape from his marriage. Defense attorneys attempted to paint a different picture, focusing on Michael's mental state. They argued that years of feeling undermined by Lauren's success had left him fragile and mentally unstable. They claimed he had acted impulsively in a moment of anger, not with premeditated intent. But as prosecutors dismantled this theory with carefully curated evidence of Michael's meticulous planning, the defense's argument weakened. The gruesome reality of how he had dismembered Lauren's body and concealed her remains painted him as cold and calculating, rather than a man who had simply lost control. As the trial progressed, the weight of Michael's actions became undeniable to those in the courtroom. The prosecution's final witnesses were friends and family of Lauren, whose testimonies left an emotional impact. They described Lauren as a driven, caring woman whose only fault, perhaps, had been her willingness to work through the troubles in her marriage. Family members recounted her recent anxieties and emotional withdrawal, unknowingly foreshadowing the tragedy that would unfold. With every passing day, the courtroom atmosphere grew more somber. The jury listened, absorbing the web of lies, the cold details of Lauren's final hours, and the tragic consequences of Michael's resentment. Outside, the public began speculating about the inevitable sentence, and the local news covered every development. For Macomb County, this was more than a murder trial. It was a shocking reminder of how, beneath the appearance of suburban tranquility, dark secrets and unchecked envy could lead to unthinkable violence. After nearly 3 weeks of testimony, the jury was presented with its final task, deciding whether Michael Harris was guilty of premeditated murder. The evidence was damning, and the prosecution had left little room for doubt. On December 19, 2007, the jury returned with their verdict. Michael Harris was found guilty of first-degree murder, tampering with evidence, and obstruction of justice. Gasps and murmurs filled the courtroom as the verdict was announced, a tangible sense of relief mixed with sorrow for Lauren's family, who held each other tightly, some in tears. Judge Alan Phelps addressed the court solemnly, emphasizing the gravity of the crime and its premeditated nature. In his final remarks, Judge Phelps stated, "The actions taken by Mr. Harris have inflicted irreparable harm on those who loved Lauren Harris and the community as a whole. This is a reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked rage and resentment." The judge then sentenced Michael to 80 years in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring he would spend the majority, if not all, of his life behind bars. Michael's face remained expressionless as the sentence was delivered. Friends and family of Lauren expressed relief, but the anguish of the loss was etched into their faces, knowing that no sentence would bring her back. Outside the courthouse, reporters captured every reaction as people shared their thoughts on the trial's outcome. Many spoke of how the case had shocked the community, exposing the hidden dangers of toxic relationships and the darkness that could lurk behind closed doors. Michael was led away, his eyes empty, as if he had resigned himself to this fate. The facade of the loving husband, carefully constructed over the years, was gone, replaced by the hollow image of a man who had lost everything in the wake of his own actions. In a rare interview given just days after his conviction, Michael offered no apology or expression of remorse, cementing his public image as a man devoid of empathy. The trial and sentencing marked the end of a dark chapter for Macomb County, but the impact of the case lingered long after the courtroom doors closed. In the months that followed, conversations surrounding domestic abuse and hidden violence grew louder, as people questioned how such a horrific crime could have been prevented. Lauren's friends organized vigils and fundraisers in her memory, creating a foundation to support victims of domestic violence, a legacy that, they hoped, would prevent another tragedy like hers. The Michael Harris case became a defining moment for Macomb County, a tragic story that left an indelible mark on the community. In the months following the trial, Lauren's family and friends struggled to come to terms with the brutal loss of a woman they remembered as vibrant, compassionate, and driven. Her parents, in particular, faced an overwhelming grief that no justice could assuage. Lauren had been their pride and joy, a source of inspiration for everyone who knew her, and the horror of her death was a wound that would never fully heal. In the wake of the trial, the local media shifted its focus to broader issues. True crime documentaries and investigative reports scrutinized the case, exploring the warning signs that had gone unnoticed in the hidden strains of a seemingly ordinary marriage. News specials analyzed Michael's psychological profile, tracing his escalating resentment and insecurity, and asked how a man who had once been part of a close-knit community could become capable of such a brutal act. Lauren's death highlighted a sobering reality, the subtle, often hidden signs of a toxic relationship that can go unnoticed by even the closest of friends and family. Community leaders in Macomb County worked alongside Lauren's family to bring attention to the issue of domestic violence and emotional abuse. The Lauren Harris Foundation, established by her family, became a local symbol of hope and resilience. Its mission was clear: to support victims of domestic abuse, fund educational programs on relationship health, and create resources for those who felt trapped in dangerous domestic situations. The foundation organized a series of workshops and support groups for people in the community, fostering conversations about recognizing unhealthy relationship dynamics. Volunteers trained in counseling and social work offered guidance to those who needed help, and slowly a new sense of awareness grew within Macomb County. As word spread, neighboring communities began implementing similar programs, aiming to prevent another tragedy like Lauren's. Meanwhile, Michael Harris settled into life behind bars, Serving his sentence in a Michigan state penitentiary, he became a reclusive figure within the prison walls. In his initial months, he rejected all media interview requests, choosing instead to isolate himself. Fellow inmates, aware of his crime, showed him no sympathy, and he soon fell into the solitary existence of a man haunted by his own actions. Reports from within the prison described him as withdrawn, displaying little remorse or emotion, his cold detachment marking him as an outcast even among hardened criminals.